Hi there. My name's Pete Fernbaugh. I'm a local voter here in Hancock County. Have lived in the Hancock County School District since 2011. I'm also a substitute teacher in the Hancock County School District, and I am pleased to have with me today Melissa Bane, who is running for the Board of Education for the elections on May 12th. The new term for the BOE starts on July 1st, and Melissa Bane has a lot of experience in education. She has worked in the Hancock County School District before, and she is now the STEAM tax specialist for West Virginia University. And she'll explain what all that means. But Melissa, so good to have you with us today. I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to know you. I've known you for a long time, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to know you better and to understand why you're running for Board of Education. These are precarious times, obviously. But let's start with your background. So, for folks who don't know you, if that's possible, uh,
It surely is.
why don't you give us a little bit of your background and your passion for education?
Okay, well, I won't go too far back, although I will say my website will be available very soon, within maybe by the time people see this video, and my full profile piece that was in Hometown News will be on there because I'm the one that wrote it. So I'm not taking away from Hometown News. It was a contributed piece, but my
Right.
family is from Hancock County, going way back into the 1800s at least. I have to go to the courthouse to find out further than that, but I was born in not born here. I was born in Pennsylvania, but I was in Hancock County from about 3 years old on. I went to through schools at Allison Elementary, Chester Junior High, Oakland Middle School, Oakland High School, and then when I was a freshman, we moved to Weirton. So I actually graduated from Weir High. Did some different things in my life before I officially entered education, although I had wanted to be a teacher from a small child. And the side road in my life is that I joined the Navy to get money to go to college to
Right.
be a teacher. So it
Right.
wasn't really, that I'm like, well, I'm just going to be in the military and forget about teaching. It was to fund my education. But I started at West Virginia Northern with an associate's degree, received that, graduated from West Liberty University, and began teaching at Allison Elementary, which is the elementary I attended. I've lived in Weirton the entire time that I've taught in Hancock County schools and even now, but I was at Allison teaching kindergarten for 6 years. And then I transferred to Oakland Middle School to start a STEAM program with a makerspace at Oakland Middle for 5 years, and then getting ready to start my 6 years, the wonderful opportunity to be on the ground floor of a statewide STEAM education program was available. And so, as much as I wanted to continue my goals at Oakland Middle, I knew I had to get in on what WVU was doing. And that's the job that I have now.
And
Um,
you said to me before that this job has taken you to 45 of the 55 counties in
Yes,
West
that's a
Virginia.
very quick count from my memory. I think it's right, though. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it is correct. And so my group, sometimes we work regionally, but there have been times that we've taught together rather,
Hmm.
that I've had to go to, Monroe County, Mercer
Right.
County. I've been in the Eastern Panhandle. I mean, I've been in every area, even if it wasn't every county. So the perspective I have gained from being in
Yeah.
45 different counties in this state truly informs my thoughts about some things. I realize you asked for me to talk about education just in my passion for it. I think as a young child, I love to be in school. I love to be in
Hmm.
school. I love to play school. And I really early on developed a heart for reaching every person. It's something I truly believe that just because you're teaching doesn't mean a student is learning. And I have based my practice on being attentive to student needs and trying to understand if they are really learning what they need to learn,
Right.
and informing my practice in that way. With the WVU STEAM TAC, I have the opportunity to embed in teachers' classrooms the entire day in middle schools or high schools, and we teach hands on collaborative lessons that focus on careers, focus on problems in West Virginia, allow them to use their content knowledge to
Hmm.
expand on all of these things. So it's really an amazing opportunity because it's things students are highly engaged in.
Hmm.
but it also opens the world of opportunity for them through these lessons.
There are a few things that I want to highlight. So you have experience in this district as not just a teacher. You have experience as a student who's
Mhm.
come up through several of the different schools
Yes.
in the county. You're familiar with the culture of these schools because if you've spent time in the two different high schools, you know that the culture is a little different at both high schools, just as it's different at the middle schools. It's a very big district. And the other thing I wanted to highlight from what you said is STEAM. I think it's important for those who may not be familiar with what STEAM is and what the Makerspace program was at Oak Glen Middle School. If you could highlight that for us, kind of explain just quickly what STEAM is, what the
Yeah,
Makerspace was, and how that and what you're doing specifically for WVU.
sure. Okay, so I'll back up to when I first was able to start working at Oakland Middle School and the interview for that. The position I knew was for career awareness and learning skills. And I reached out to find out more about that. I had just finished 6 years of teaching kindergarten. And just a quick background, my degree is K-6 elementary, but 5 to 9 math. So I actually always planned on teaching middle school math. I did not think that kindergarten was going to be it. But when it was time for me to find a job, surprisingly, if people remember back then it was really hard to get
Yeah.
into the school. So I interviewed, I think, against 18 other people just to get my kindergarten position. And I grew to really love it. However, after 6 years, I wanted to get into something different. So that's one thing I just want to say. There are teachers that find that spot and they stay in it and they are excellent in it for 30 or more years. I kind of do things for a while and then I'm ready to try a different thing. And I love everything about my kindergarten experience, which I was a very hands on kindergarten teacher. Students were working in their stations and were able to actually take ownership of a lot of what
Hmm.
they were doing. And when I saw the career awareness and learning skills and I wanted to see what that was more about, there was an idea that they really wanted to develop a STEM program at Oakland Middle School. So, in order to prepare for the interview, I looked up STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. By looking up STEM education, I fell into STEAM education, which
Right.
adds that
Right.
A for the arts, art and design. And that also led me to maker spaces. So, just by researching for this interview, I came up with all these ideas and had terminology to bring into the interview that the interviewing staff didn't even actually
Right.
know had existed yet.
Right.
And it was a really interesting thing because people said to me, "Oh my goodness, what are you going to do? You don't have a curriculum." And other people like, "This is awesome. You can make it whatever you want it to be."
Right.
So I was very fortunate by having support from the administration and getting grants. I also pursued and received grants of my own. And we did all kinds of hands on learning from low tech to high tech, with critical thinking and problem solving being at the
Hmm.
core of everything. And that's extremely important to me. Even when I taught kindergarten, I had teachers, parents, administrators say the way that you help the students develop critical thinking at this age.
Yes.
We need this in other areas. And there's a lot of research that says that like a 5 or a 6-year-old doesn't have the capacity to think critically. That is not true.
No,
They
it's
can't fully think critically on all things, but you can definitely guide their thinking
right.
by asking the why questions and having them defend their answers. Not that they're wrong. Just tell me why you say that. And
Right.
I have learned over the years asking, why do you say that, is a
Hmm.
really important question. We can assume all kinds of things, and this is for children or adults.
Hmm.
Give an opportunity to ask, why do you say that, because it's enlightening. But back to the middle school, we, like I said, low tech to high tech, we did robotics, we did simple circuits, just so
Right.
many things, and it
These were
gave students.
hands-on spaces.
Yeah.
Functional. I love the maker space because it was functional. Students didn't just sit at a desk. They actually got in there and worked on projects and worked on concepts. They didn't just learn about concepts, they worked on concepts.
Well, one of the things I am immensely proud of, and I guess we'll just see what happens in this next school year, but that did not die with me.
Right.
Three other teachers have continued that mission since
Mm,
I left. And some of them, well, I've been in close contact with each one of them, all
mm-hmm.
of the time telling them, you don't have to do things the way I did. As
Right.
long as there's critical thinking happening, problem solving, hands on, this is a fantastic opportunity. And some of the projects that were close to my heart, teachers did continue, and they brought in their own amazing ideas. And I literally said to every single one of them, there are so many things that meet the definition of what this classroom can be. You don't have to do anything you don't care about. So if I
Mm-hmm.
had a project that you don't like, replace it with one you're
Right.
passionate about. And the thing that has been amazing through all that time is it really did it spark things with students that I didn't even expect. I had a student tell
Right.
me, your class really helped me with my inventions. And I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's what you want to hear. We want innovators, we want
Yes.
critical thinkers, we want people that are looking at problems and finding new ways to solve them. So with the
And I'd
job
like to,
now,
right, go
yeah.
ahead. I'd like to point out that a lot of times I see folks who aren't in the educational system online just assuming they know what students are learning in the
Mhm.
classroom. But the truth is, there are teachers like yourself who, all the time we hear people aren't critically thinking enough, on and on and on. But there are teachers like yourself, and there are programs in the school that are actively training students to do just that. That
Sure.
it's still a vital part, and you were instrumental in expanding the horizons, that mission of schooling locally, to bring in those elements of critical thinking and exploring concepts as opposed to just learning them passively.
Oh, yeah. And actually, I completed my master's degree a couple years ago, and my
Mm-hmm.
capstone project was on critical thinking, which my 15-minute capstone is on my LinkedIn for anyone that wants to watch it. It's lots of research, which I
Right.
learned during that time. There's not actually even agreed upon definition of critical thinking, which I
Mm-hmm.
think explains why it's difficult to attack it. How do you teach something when you can't even agree on
Yeah.
what it is?
One thing people should know about Melissa is that she is a researcher bar none. She can research anything and find out information that you wouldn't even think to explore. That is one of your strengths, not just as an educator, but
I
as a
don't know how
candidate.
you even know that, Pete.
Oh, I observe, I pay attention. um, so, yes, let's get into very briefly what you're doing for WVU right now because,
Sure.
the BOE is not a full time job. You'll still be doing this
Oh,
while you're
100%. And I
yes.
do want to talk about how I checked all my boxes before turning in my form.
Which I think is great because I think what the Board of Education locally needs, especially, and we're going to talk about this where it is right now, they need someone on there who is day to day involved in education. And the gift that you would bring to the Board of Education is that you're not just involved locally, you're involved statewide. So
Yeah.
you have that unique perspective, but also that unique connection, that unique network that a lot of candidates, not bashing them, of course, but a lot of candidates can't bring to the table.
Oh,
So,
sure.
so just really briefly tell us what the STEAM Tax Specialist program is, since you got in on it on the ground floor.
Oh, yeah. So the funny thing about that is it was in July, and I'm sorry if you're hearing my work stuff ding. I am off today, but
You're
it's
fine. You're
coming up
fine. I'm not
anyway.
hearing anything.
Okay, perfect. But it was in July, and I was supposed to go for a walk with my friend, and she was having trouble. And I said, you know what? That's okay. I want to clean out my email. This is what I was going to do one day in July, and I didn't get very far with that because I saw the job advertisement for this program, and it's very funny. I was walking up the steps because I was looking at it downstairs, and I sighed when I was walking up the steps. And my husband said, "Honey, what's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, nothing's wrong. There's this job that would be so awesome for me, like in like 2 or 3 years." And he said, "Well, why 2 or 3 years? Why not now?" Well, I had just received a huge grant to fulfill a vision that I had that I thought would be amazing, but I wanted to do it. And
Hmm.
he's like, well, what is the job? And as I was talking with him about it, he's like, that kind of sounds like what you're doing now, but on a broader, a
Hmm.
broader scale. And then I learned that it was brand new. I thought it was replacing a person. When I realized it was a brand new program, I
Hmm.
thought, you know what? I'm just going to have to apply. We'll see what happens. I didn't even really know if I wanted it, but I thought I have to at least try. And
Hmm.
what happened is it was a program that was developed through ESSER funds. So that's something that comes up a lot with Hancock County, and I'm
Yes, it does.
intimately aware with it because that's how I was paid for the first 3 years, and they ended, and our program had to pivot and get money in different ways.
Hmm.
But the point was the federal government put out money for the states saying, what is your plan to close the pandemic learning gap?
Hmm.
And someone, I think, was sitting on this idea of a traveling STEAM program for some time, but had no funding for it. They heard about this grant. I don't really know who the movers and shakers were, but they
Right.
said, this is a way because kids had been isolated, not allowed to work together, not communicating with each other. Those social skills were really impaired. And so the idea was, let's have a program that is standards based. So that means by law what kids are supposed to be learning in their classroom. So standards based, connected to careers, hands on, leave materials in the classroom that the teacher can continue to use and embed professional development. If they
Hmm.
don't already know how to bring their curriculum into a very hands on experience, let's show them some ideas. So that's the
Right.
core of the program. And I was hired, well, I interviewed and was waiting. It was just a couple of days before the school year started. And this happened, of course, to the entire team. They started the program with just 3 teachers, me, one from Barber County, and one from Fayette County. And we got together September 15th of 2021 and started meeting people at the Department of Education, going on field trips to all kinds of places, like growing the idea for what can this program be, which was
Right.
phenomenal because anyone we've hired since then, they didn't get to do all these things.
Right.
They just had
Right.
to learn how to teach the lessons, but we
Right.
developed the lessons. We worked together on a team to make sure that they were transdisciplinary. So for non-educators, that means you can have this lesson in a history class, a math class, a science class, a music class. Like
Mm.
it will meet standards. You don't have to act like it's an extra day away from your curriculum. It
Right.
actually is something that's valuable for what the kids need to be learning. And that took a lot of work, obviously, but there's master educators, putting this together. So we started in middle schools, then we expanded out into high schools, and the purpose of the program was to reach all 55 counties, which we have and do. So
Hmm.
teachers register on their own accord. They say, hey, I want a lesson, and we schedule it, and we come
Hmm.
in and we work with their class the entire day, leave behind materials that they can continue using for the rest of forever.
Yeah.
And it's really inspires most of our teachers sign up again the next year. We have very few times that someone doesn't, and usually it's because they've left. Like so I've been in every school in Hancock County with public schools, let me say, with this
Right.
program, including the Alternative Learning Center,
Hmm.
and last year and this year as well. I also did have an opportunity to bring my program to um, St. Paul's, which is not normally what we do, but sometimes it happens. So when you talk about the culture of the schools, I actually have been in one capacity or the other every school in Hancock
Hmm.
County, New Manchester Elementary, Weirton Elementary,
Right.
plus all the ones I taught in. And I will say that with this program, it's just been a breath of fresh air for some teachers. It just ignites that spark because we know, you and I know, the
No. Right.
demands on teachers right now.
Right.
With all best intentions, there's only so many hours in the day. And
Right.
so we try to introduce technology, take the burden off of them. We are teaching their kids how to use it while they are also learning how to use it, and then they can take off with it.
I think that's an important aspect of the experience you bring. Not just the statewide experience, but locally your perspective as an educator. Obviously, it's not news to anybody that Hancock County on the political end, and unfortunately now on the budgeting end, is in a very bad way. But the positive is, on the education side, it's in a very good way. The scores are good.
Mm-hmm.
The programs, even in the wake of all these budgeting shortfalls and all these cuts, determined teachers are maintaining these programs. And even as their classrooms get bigger, even as the demands on them become more excruciating, these teachers are going to persist and they're going to keep ensuring that the standard of education remains high. So I guess the big question is, it'd be easy for you to just sit by and continue doing what you're doing, which is more than sitting by. You're actually participating and you're helping those teachers out. Why run for the Board of Education now? We're in a situation where the state has taken over. The local board is bemoaning the fact that they have no power. There are lots of questions, not only about the management of the former superintendent, but former superintendents going back possibly 10 years, depending on what timeline you read. There are board positions or board administrative positions that have been eliminated. So now the board office is even smaller in size, or will be smaller in size. Um, and then to sit on a board that has no power, why try to join the Board of Education at this time?
Because I think I can help.
Okay, right, right. But
And
how
I'm
can
sorry, I'm a little
no, 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 no.
emotional.
Yeah,
Well,
no, no,
I,
get emotional because it's
well,
an
no, I
emotional
worry
thing.
because I don't want people to think, listen, I, my entire adulthood, have done hard things because I
Right.
believe in them, not because they were comfortable. And I'll be completely honest, the thought of running for the board did not enter my mind until January 17th, which
Mm-hmm.
that date is significant because it's the date after the state takeover.
Right.
I had been, just like everyone else in the community, shocked, embarrassed, angry, sad, at all
Mm-hmm.
of the things that were coming out. And I travel a lot for work. So some of the board meetings I called into, I wasn't there
Mm-hmm.
in person,
Mm-hmm.
but I was trying to get as much information as I could. And I watched the recording. I didn't watch it live because I was working that day, but I watched the recording of the State Board of Education emergency meeting.
Yep.
That, if people don't know, that came about, honestly, I mean, I have it posted on my Facebook, and it's in other places too. But that meeting came about because people were reaching out to everyone
Mm-hmm.
saying, if we're not getting paid, what is going to happen? I can't come to work and not make a living, because there was a question of whether
There
payroll
was.
was going to be met for January. And the board wasn't planning on acting. It was an emergency meeting because they're like, oh my goodness, the staff might not be showing up to work. Parents are concerned. What is going
Right.
on? And so when I listened to that meeting, in very short order, some things were lined out. Now, I do want to just go on record and say, I'm not sure that the full story of even what we've heard already is 100% accurate. And I have reasons
Mm-hmm.
for believing that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it was decided by the state board that, yes, Hancock County, you cannot continue to administer your own things. And so the superintendent and assistant superintendent were fired as of 4 p.m. that day,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the board was stripped of authority.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next day, I was on social media and I saw someone post that no one had, uh, at that point, no one had filed to run for the Board of Education.
I remember
And I
seeing that
looked up,
post. Yeah.
yeah, I looked up the dates, and actually, if from memory, it was January 13th to January 30th. So we were only a few days into when you could have filed
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So the fact that no one had filed yet at that point wasn't entirely, damning for the whole thing.
Right.
But I was thinking, gosh, we really need good people in there.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about at some point a while ago, something had happened with me professionally, and I kind of just knew that it wasn't for me to take on this other role. And I do have a very strong faith, and I just really felt like God impressed on me, I have other
Hmm.
things for you, and gave me the idea of Board of Education, but honestly, not with the timeline at all. And it had
Right.
not been on my mind at all. Like
Right.
after I retire, because that's when everyone does it. You know? And there's a reason for that too. A lot of people don't know you may not be an active employee for Hancock County Schools and run for the board. I mean, you just
Right.
can't. That's why it's retired educators that sometimes do that.
And that's why you're in a
But it
unique position because you're not.
entirely, entirely. And a lot of people don't know that. They still think I work for Hancock County Schools. So,
Right. Well,
I
you're around a
definitely
lot.
do not. WVU is my employer. But with that being said, I started thinking about it and praying about it. And on Sunday, the next day, someone texted me and said, "You should run for Board of Education." And I responded, "I'm thinking about it." And she texted back, "I am serious," with all these exclamation points. And I said, "So am I." Because I think she thought I was just, and I was like, "No, I really am thinking about it." And so that was right before Martin Luther King Day holiday. So on Monday, all the government offices were closed, but I had already started talking to my boss. Like, what do you think? Is this something I even can do? And, I know we don't want this interview to go on super long, so I
No,
don't want
that's
to give
fine.
every piece of it, but I reached out to the ethics commission to check and see in my position where I am actually working in the schools
Hmm.
as a guest, can I do this? I talked to WVU legal. I went through all kinds of forms and verification and getting permission from my
Like I said,
bosses.
she does her research.
Yeah, well, I didn't want anyone to say, that there was a
Right.
conflict of interest, and I don't want to
Right.
leave my job. I love my job. And people started texting me left and right and calling me, "Are you going to run for the board?" And I said, "I am looking into it." Like they don't understand. And I wouldn't say anything publicly because I wanted to make sure I was allowed
Right.
before I actually did it.
Here's why people want you to run. I listened to the Board of Education meeting after the state took over. So this was when they did the forensic analysis of the finances. They presented the results of that investigation. Sort of. Sorry, I can't help but editorialize. And then after that, they gave the board who's in place now, and you don't have to go along with what I'm about to say. They gave the board in place now the opportunity to ask questions. And they started asking questions that, to my mind, should have been the questions they were asking all along. And what I, as a voter and an employee of the school district, want on the board is someone who's going to anticipate the questions before or as they need to be asked, not after the crap has hit the fan, not after everything has gone down. And the one thing that I hear in everything you're saying, and from knowing you for many years, you do your research. Things don't get by you. I mean, look at the amount of research you did, not only to get the STEAM program started locally, but then to expand it statewide under WVU. And then look at what the research you did for your master's. Look at the research you did just to ensure that you could run for the board. That's the kind of person I want on the board, even though you have no voting power going in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of person I want on the board who's going to ask the state now the
Mm-hmm.
questions that need to be asked. Because as far as I'm concerned, the state hasn't answered all the questions that they should ask about this situation and their oversight slash involvement in it. So I want someone in there who's going to ask the questions that I think need to be asked, but I don't necessarily have the knowledge base to ask. So that, to me, if there you have lots of strengths as a candidate, that is your biggest strength. I know you're going to be on there asking the questions when they need to be asked, and not just letting things slide by, and not just assuming because a budget is presented to you from the other side of the table that's allegedly been vetted. Oh, then we don't have we just have to sign off on it. No, I want questions asked. I want those budgets read. I want that's why I vote in elections, you know?
Sure. Well, I will say, so that the question that you asked about why run now,
Yeah.
um, over that weekend before I decided to really pursue it, just to see if I could, I was thinking, we need people to come forward that can. And I'm cautious for how this is going to sound, but I just have to be me.
Just say it.
You know, yeah, I thought
There are a lot of
there
things that
is
aren't
no
being
one.
said that need to
There
be
is
said.
no one
Yes.
that is going to have the experience that I have and the
No.
perspective that I can bring. There just simply isn't. I am in an extremely unique position to
Mm-hmm.
have an education job that does not prohibit me from doing this. Sometimes people work in a school district and live in another, and that enables them to be on the Board of Education somewhere. But I am literally in these schools seeing the good things that you're talking about, and
Right.
knowing what's happening, as well as seeing, all of the other things that I would raise an eyebrow to. And
Mm-hmm.
as a employee, you have very little power. I don't want to get into that a lot right now, but the thing is, I have
Right.
nothing to lose with this
Right.
at all.
But
And when
yeah, there are so many questions that the public has that, and so
mhm,
many misconceptions the public
sure.
has, because no matter what the current superintendent says, they're still not being as transparent as they should be. So we're operating there, and they're always telling us, don't look at what's said on social media, don't look at what's being said, vet it first, go to the source, blah, blah, blah. Well, when the source isn't giving you any information, we need someone there who's going to get that information for us.
Right. So before I filed officially, and actually I had to wait until the 11th hour to get official approval from WVU. And I'm just like, oh, but it finally came through. I had a lot of people pulling for me. It just bureaucratic paperwork. It wasn't that I wasn't allowed, but I wanted the official thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was recommended to me. It wasn't my own idea, but it was
Mm-hmm.
recommended to me to reach out to Superintendent Saunders to speak with him and see what he thought the role would be of the Board of
Mm-hmm.
Education when they had no authority. And I am pleased that I sent him an email and we were on the phone that same day. Like, he called
Excellent.
me, we discussed it.
Good.
And I don't think he even knows that I've worked for Hancock County, because I didn't tell him that. I
Good.
just said
That's fine.
I'm looking to run for the Board of Education, and I had some questions. So when I asked him how he anticipated working with the board and what is even the purpose of the board when there's no voting rights, he said, I think more than ever, the Board of Education is important because there needs to be transparency, which I know that's a hot button issue, but I'm just reporting the conversation.
Great. That's fine.
And he said, there's going to be a lot of, well, I heard,
Mm-hmm.
and we need people that, constituents can go to get solid information.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to ask questions, even though they cannot vote on things, they can ask questions and engage in discussion. And
Mm-hmm.
so I felt that that was really important because I have many, many questions. Now, I want to go on record and say there are many strong and wonderful things in Hancock County that need to be protected. And there
Mm-hmm.
are things that need to be rooted out and looked at face value. I mean, there just are. And anyone that's honest with themselves knows that this county has not always followed state code and policy. So the
Mm-hmm.
questions we need to be asking going forward, anytime something comes up, is there a policy that deals with that? And if there is, what is the policy? And if there isn't, just make sure, do your due diligence before you take autonomy, because there's a lot. I'm still on the outside looking in. I'm
Right.
reading the same things everyone else is reading.
Mm-hmm.
I have contact with Uriah Cummings. I've spoken with him about things. Dr. Black may or may not know me by name. I have met her before,
Mm-hmm.
but I know people I can ask about things, but there's still a lot that's a mystery. And when policy isn't being followed, that's a problem, because state code, which I don't know how much the average voter knows, but the legislature sets the state code for the schools. I mean, that is law. And if we don't like a policy, those men and women get together every January through March and come up with all kinds of laws, to consider. So all you really have to do is wait a few more months to try to
Hmm.
get the ear of your delegate or your senator to see how can we change this. But in the meantime, you have to make sure everything follows that. And, some people might take offense to what I'm about to say, but quite frankly, Pete,
Who cares?
I don't know. I'm in my 40s. There's a saying about being blunt, like I
Yes.
don't have time for trying to
Yes.
worry about stepping on toes. Um, in this riff and transfer season, before it even started, I said to multiple people, the problem we're going to have is that decisions are going to be made and people are going to talk about the experience when that happened to them and what the process was when it happened to them, and their stories are all going to be different and they're all true.
Mm, that's such a great point.
Well, because for a long time, as you say, what's the policy? It wasn't on the website. It wasn't, where is it at? And, I do not want to speak out of turn because more than anything, I want to learn before I say things. But when questions have been asked about the tiebreaker for seniority and they put up a policy that's dated 2014 and revised 2017 and state code changed in 2019, I don't know.
Well,
Is this a thing where, like, for me, I'm in the new retirement system.
mhm.
And the old retirement system, just to explain something, in the old retirement system, uh, staff for the county were able to use their unused sick days for things like added time on seniority or to
Mhm.
pay for insurance. I was hired after the state legislature said, no way, your days don't count for anything.
Right,
But that
right.
didn't change the policy for the older people. So, this tiebreaker, one of the questions I have is, and I haven't had an opportunity to get the answer or to even ask the question yet. Is it true then, if you were hired after July 1st, 2019, this is the policy for tiebreaker for you? And if you were hired prior to July 1st, 2019, is it the one that they posted on the website? But there's discrepancies there. And it affects people's jobs and their livelihood
Right.
in a very real way. And as far as the transparency issue, Mr. Saunders told me that he wanted board members to be the people that you could go to and ask questions. I don't know if he meant the board starting on July 1st or what, because I have reached out to board members and their answer to me is, I don't know more than you. So I'm not sure when this timeline of transparency is going to begin. Mr. Saunders actually reported to the state board meeting that there's transparency because the rift and transfers are out. That's not what I had in mind when that word was being used. And I
The
don't want to, I don't know until
I'll
I
tell
can
you
really.
yeah, I'll tell you this, Melissa. When all of this was going down, it never occurred to me to reach out to a Board of Education member. Never occurred to me
And
because
that's who,
I wouldn't know who to talk to. I mean,
right.
I know, and I mean, honestly, the only person who seemed to have any sort of information was Mr. McGeehan, was Pat McGeehan,
Mm,
and he's not part of the Board of Education. He's the legislature.
right.
So, I mean, that's if anything during this time, I agree with Superintendent Saunders. We, the public and employees, need someone that we know we can call and get information from, get clarification. Because a
Hmm.
lot of times, and now you're looking at policies that are discrepant. I'm looking at news reports that are discrepant, rumors in social media that are discrepant, information from the administrative office itself that's vague and discrepant. And so out here, no wonder people are like, well, I'm not paying taxes on that. Or, there's so much confusion
Yeah.
about where tax dollars go. For example, I did correct someone online recently about the whole POR, SOR situation. And that was easy to do because I just pulled up the state law, because they thought they were getting paid by both the police department and the school district. And I had to
Hmm.
pull up the state law and show, and that was easy to find. But that was an exception. Most things aren't easy to find, or
Sure.
they're, as you're outlining, they're clear. So as a voter, I would say we need someone that we can talk to, preferably more than one. It shouldn't all fall to you. If
Sure. No,
you
of
know,
course.
But we need and I agree with him. That's what we need are people asking the questions we want asked, because so far that hasn't been happening. And
Right.
you don't have to agree with that. I'm just being, I'm in my
Well,
40s
I mean,
too. I'm
no,
being candid.
because that is the thing that we do want to. And actually, I really am just putting myself out there. I've spoken with many employees, which the social media policy, you have to be careful. And so I hope
Yeah.
you feel it. You're towing that line. But they have questions, and this is so sad, but I know why. They are afraid to ask because of retaliation, and they put the FAQ on the website, the Hancock County Schools website, and you have to put your name to it. And
Yes.
so I had a teacher reach out to me and she said, this is what we want to know, but we can't do it anonymously. And I said, I will post your questions for you. So for anyone that's listening that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
know, the website got a refresh recently, and there is a frequently asked questions piece where is the seniority tiebreaker that I just referred to.
Mm-hmm.
But they said as people submit questions, if the same question gets submitted by multiple people, then they'll publish it on the FAQ. Now, so it wouldn't be me asking the question and then it's get published. I mean, multiple people have to ask the same thing. But I said, I'm willing to ask any of the questions that you all want. I'll put my
Yeah.
name on it. That's fine. I said, but I'm going to start with asking, does this have to be where you have to register your name? Can there not be an anonymous way to ask a question? And it took a few days, but I did receive an answer, which was, no. And employees can speak directly with the people they have concerns with. Well, that really is not going to alleviate the concern for
No.
retaliation, and it's
The
fair
culture of
question.
retaliation is very real. You mentioned social media. I have gone to post things at times, and I have stopped because I'm afraid if I a less about blowback on me, but blowback on my wife, who's a full time teacher. Because things are, and I can tell you, being in a school system right now, or being at a specific high school in a long term position, there is, I know that fear of retaliation is embedded in the culture at this particular school. And it's not just with regards to the board office, it's with regards to the administration there. So you're talking about fear of retaliation. That's very real. It's not paranoia. It's a real thing.
Right. Well, the one thing that, talking about the culture is one of the things that I think is important, because a lot of times people want to know, like, as a board member, what would you do? And, you've covered it really well. Like, my first intention is to ask questions and to
Mm-hmm.
be, some people
Be
get
annoying. Please be
annoyed by
annoying.
me. But yeah, because I am annoying. I mean, and
Yes.
like my team that I work with right now, we're a very small team, and it was interesting seeing us come together at first because we all three of us came from school experiences that could be damaging. They just are. People that
Mm-hmm.
aren't in education don't even
Mm-hmm.
understand what really goes on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we had to kind of learn to trust each other and to be able to critique each other to make our work amazing without having hurt feelings. That is easier said than done, but we got there. And as new people have come on to the team for SteamTech, I'm the one that says, listen, you have to tell us the truth. You have to speak up. We are too small for you not to speak your mind. You are hired for your expertise. It is required. It is needed. Dialogue needs to happen. And that's the key. I don't know what has happened in our culture overall where dialogue is now some sort of enemy. We need to have real conversations. We need to have teams of people looking at issues. You need to look for the advocates of certain things and try to work through so many things. And so one of the things that I believe is we are going to need to move into a recovery phase that not only makes sure that policies are aligned to state code, but improves morale, promotes unity, builds positive school culture, not only in each school, but across this county. And I know, because I literally grew up in both ends and I have taught in both ends. That's a real thing still. And I'm like, we are all Hancock County.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have rival schools, but the purpose could be debated, but the purpose of education is supposed to, and teach children. All
Mhm.
the other things are secondary, tertiary, whatever. So why can't we work together and find the thing that works really well at Oak Glen, and let the Weir High people mull it over and see how they can apply it, or the thing that works really, really well at Weir High, let the people at Oak Glen take that into consideration and really mull it over. And actually, I know that the two head principals at those schools right now are it
They are,
working
yes.
pretty well together. So I don't want to use that as an example to say it's not happening. That's a kind of a new thing.
I
you
listened to
know?
I listened to some of the last board meeting, and I was really encouraged to hear that, because sometimes
Sure.
all you hear about is the rivalry, which when you're a sub in the district, you end up circulating. I've done long-term positions at Oak Glen High School. Now I'm at Weir High, and I've been in the elementary schools. So you get this multifaceted view of the county, and then you hear about the rivalries, and it's like, no, there's no need for it, because, as you said, we are Hancock County. The one thing I wanted to address is, you mentioned morale. And this, once again, is just me. This is not you saying it. But I was a bit taken back when the superintendent told the state that morale was good in the county. I'm there every day. It's not good. It's not good. Um, the the day when they came in and cut positions was a very tough day. And they were able to do it on the board end, on the state end, without any emotional attachment, because that was their job. But there are teachers who are being lost, who aren't just vital in their role. I'm thinking of one in particular. They're vital for the mental health of the students, because
Mm,
beyond what they do as a teacher, they are viewed by the students as a rock. So if they're having a good day, they can go to this teacher, or having a bad day, they can go to this teacher and rely on her to help them get through. She's not going to be there next year. Uh, so the loss is being felt not just by the staff, not just by colleagues. It's being felt by the students who are asking questions. I heard students say, well, if so and so is not going to be here next year, I'm just going to go online, because they're the only reason I come to school every day. That isn't good morale.
right.
That's gutting to people involved. So I think what you bring is this dual view. You have that state view of things from your experience, but you also know what it's like to be in the classroom every day, and you understand students become reliant on their teachers for more than just what the next lesson is, or what the what the next um, what the next assignment is. Sometimes that teacher is who they live to see every day, and
Hmm.
when that teacher isn't there, they feel a little lost. So I think I think it's so important right now to have people on the board who understand the emotional component that goes with working in education, beyond the educational component.
Yeah, well, I actually had an opportunity yesterday to be at Focus Forward, which was a fantastic conference
Mm-hmm.
held by the West Virginia Public Education Collaborative, who's actually partners with SteamTac. And they had a day full of amazing speakers. The focus of this particular conference was on AI, but Sal Khan, who is from Khan Academy, was one of the people. When I saw his name on my program, I was like, oh my goodness. And then the person in the panel prior to him, it was the first time in the day they had someone video in, and I was like, Sal's gonna video. Like I know it, but it was still really, really good because it was a fireside chat hosted by Brad Smith, who is the president of Marshall University. It was amazing. But Sal Khan, made Khan Academy. I think most people that have kids in school are probably somewhat familiar with what that is. But for anyone that isn't, he shared his story of the origins of it, where he had cousins that needed tutoring, but they lived far away. So he started it remotely just for them. And as time came on, more people needed support, and he had technological know-how and was making YouTube videos and putting
Uh-huh.
them out. And, fast forward all these years later, it's in countries all over the world. People are learning all kinds of things from Khan Academy. But he said that he thinks teaching is a safe profession from AI because relationships is what is so key for
Mm.
teaching. It's not just knowledge. And, it's just really interesting because of these kids saying, well, I'll just go virtual. I mean, they do still have a virtual teacher, and that is the appropriate choice for some students.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that has kicked off a financial problem in the entire state is the school aid formula not actually providing enough money for the personnel, because every single year counties are losing enrollment to private school, charter school, and virtual school.
Hmm.
And I believe, and I don't want to misspeak, I believe it's Berkeley County is the only county that has gained population.
Mm.
So, it's like school districts are losing students year over year, which means they get less money year over year. But there's some costs that are fixed, like the building costs, the electricity, and, the busing is still happening regardless of how many kids are getting on that bus, and, all that kind of thing. And so, right now in the news every day, you can read about this county that is riffing, 100 and some teachers, this county that's riffing, or not just teachers, but personnel,
Personnel.
another
Yeah.
county that's riffing 50 personnel. So one of the things is, while I do believe that there are some things that need to be looked at for how Hancock County handled things, it's not all their fault. And I know we want to
Right.
vilify people right now, but the fact of the matter is there are many counties that are letting go the same numbers of personnel as Hancock County is,
Hmm.
and the state has not taken them over. There's other issues going on.
Right.
And so when you see all these people leaving public school for other options, there should be no Hope Scholarship. The question should be, why don't they want to come to public school?
Right.
And there are some families and students that the answer is always going to be private, or the answer is always going to be homeschool, or the answer is always going to be virtual. But there's a segment of those kids that were in public school that have left because their needs weren't being met in one way or the other, perceived or real, like the old adage, perception is reality. I mean, if
Hmm.
you have students saying, I'm being bullied so much, I can't go, whether or not we as adults look at what's going on and think that they are, if they are having crippling anxiety, what
Hmm.
choice do they have? You know,
Right.
and teachers are being asked to do a million jobs. And
Hmm.
teaching is
Hmm.
like the least important, it seems like, on the list,
Sometimes. Sometimes.
and so by no means do I think we can solve all of these problems at once, but we have to look at them at least, because
Right.
blaming the Hope Scholarship might be an easy target, but that doesn't actually fix anything. And if someone came and pumped all kinds of money into our county right now, I will say that will not solve all the problems.
No. No. I think this is and I want to, as we start to wrap this up, I want to get into some of the things that you want to preserve, because I think policy discrepancies, addressing those. I think that's a fantastic point that you just made, though, about um, the money that's been emphasized so much. And, if we could just get that money back, then everything would go back to normal. But the big point is, it can't go back to normal. So
No.
I think what this gives us an opportunity to do as a county is to fix some of the problems that have been endemic to the system for too long, and to help us level up in the next phase when the state hopefully lets go of us, um, to help us level up and be a better functioning, more transparent, and ultimately more beneficial to students
Mm-hmm.
as a district. I think this is that opportunity. That's why it's so important that the board not just sit by and kind of be passive, but they're involved, because we need someone in there who's got a vision for what it's going to be after the state is satisfied and lets us back, lets us to, allows us to be independent again. So you mentioned you really understand what it's like to be a teacher. What are some of the other things here in Hancock County that you're going to work to preserve that might be tempting to lose in order to recover that money? you know.
Oh boy. Well, that is really tough, Pete, because honestly and truly, because of the state takeover, there is limited authority for sure. I mean, the board has no authority, and even, our superintendent is from outside, so it's
Right.
kind of hard. But one thing that I think is important is building awareness and like letting people actually have a voice, because we need to know who exactly is the state making these decisions. I seriously doubt that Michelle Blatt is like perusing everything all by herself. Surely she has a team, or whatever, Superintendent Saunders is doing. And one of the things that I personally believe is, while I appreciate the need for the outside to come in when it seems like the bottom dropped out and you don't know who to trust and you don't know who is doing things properly. And, I don't even believe in my heart that there were purposefully fraudulent things going on or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. I think there were just certain things missed, but when we are looking at what is important to us, I kind of just we don't have to sit and take it quietly. We might not
Right.
actually be able to make a change, but there is a real belief, what do they say? Like silence is,
Compliance.
yes.
Yes.
And I want us to be noisy during this. Like, if they're
Yes.
taking away things that are important, we need to at least let them know we see that you're taking this away and we truly value this. And here's the other thing, Pete. The black and white on paper doesn't have to only be, well, there's this SCOID formula and there's this many teachers, so what can we do? One of the things that's at my heart, and I really have to get to the core of the truth, because what I remember and what was real might not be the same thing. I don't know what the law is, and all of that. And so I'm putting that out there ahead of time. It's just the conversation I want to have. Why are all of our buses in New Cumberland? Why do the buses that have to service Weirton have to start in New Cumberland, go to Weirton, go around Weirton, go back to New Cumberland, and then do it again? Because before some of the properties were sold off, Weirton buses, I believe, were housed in Weirton. Like, I'm
Mm.
pretty sure that they were at the old Weir High School.
Right.
And the cost of diesel is immense. And I have done some research. I don't know the exact gas mileage on our school buses, but it's somewhere between 6 and 10 miles per gallon. So up and back, up and back, up and back, Route 2 every single day, year over year over year. Is that someone's salary?
Mm.
Is there not somewhere these buses could be? I'm not offering the solution. I'm asking a question. And
Right.
that's what we need. I think we need to start asking questions. Let's look at things. Just because the state doesn't give us enough money for the number of teachers we think we need, or the number of custodians that we think we need, or the number of secretaries, whatever it
Yeah.
is, just because they don't give us the money, does that mean we can't look at spending, look at waste, look at efficiency, look
Right.
at grants, look at donations, look at all these things to
Also,
preserve?
because the state is going to be looking at the black and white on paper, and with no emotional connection, no practical connection to the district, just the goal of getting a solvent again.
Mm-hmm.
That may lead to even more wasteful decisions, less equitable decision making, because the state's, from my perspective, is prioritizing the bottom line it's that there are creative solutions that they're not going to be aware of because they're not part of this community.
Exactly.
And the thing is, when you're just a voter out here, just a civilian like I am, you feel like, yeah, I could go to the meetings, but all they let you do is get up and state your piece, and then they carry on with business. They don't even comment on what you said. So you don't
Right.
even know if what you said landed. And we need people on the board who make what we say land, but also can rally us around what needs to happen or what needs to be prevented from happening. And if not, it's going to breed passivity within the population. And I already sense it now. People are accepting consolidation as an inevitability. But is that the right thing for this district? Is that the best thing? Is that what's supposed to happen? Is there another way that this could be handled? Does it have to be one big Hancock County high school? Does it have? I think having someone in there, even if the answer is yes, it does, I think
Right.
having
I get
someone
it.
to challenge it and to make the state realize, oh, we're just not going to be able to do this without resistance, without people being loud about it. I think that a point of using our voices, I mean, we see it now nationally, whether you agree with it or not, the No Kings protest are landing. Things like that, whether you agree with it or not, these protests are landing and they're getting people to notice. And there are other protests that are going on. I'm not saying people need to rally and protest. I'm just saying when you don't have any other power at your disposal, you still have your voice, but it helps us to know that someone is there hearing our voice and we're not just being given public time to speak. And then we're
Yeah.
going to
Well,
carry
one
on
of
with
the
business.
that you had said as far as like not going back to normal, and if
Yeah,
anyone is listening to this entire conversation, I'm sure they would get that. We're not saying, well, we can't have that because that's not how it's been. We can be flexible to change, but it has to make sense. And so one of the
absolutely.
things to I know we need to wrap this up, but things need to be, best practices, sound, research based. It
Hmm.
doesn't just because it's been going on doesn't mean it should continue or not.
I
It
love the
has to
I
be
love the
looked
research. I love the research based app. What you're saying is, to put in a different framework, evidence based.
at.
That's what you're
Sure,
saying.
absolutely.
Evidence based.
Yeah. And I think that, like I had posted a comment to someone else post in the wake of things really just kind of falling apart. Um, and I didn't mean for it to be a campaign slogan because, alas, I wasn't even thinking about running for the board when I wrote it. But I've taken hold of it, and we're working on my website, my flyers, all the things for the
Hmm.
campaign, and it's on there. Learn, improve, thrive.
Exactly.
I think that covers a lot without me having to, expound
and
on it.
and it
But
appeals to the modern slang of the kids that makes us lit.
yeah, but I mean, we have strong people. We have
Yes,
great, amazing things. There's so much good here. And the
yes,
good needs highlighted and celebrated. And, one thing going back to like the two different high schools and looking at things that happen, in no way do I want to take away autonomy of school culture. You know what I mean? Like there's different pieces of things that have been a part of things that are to be valued with tradition and, all kinds of things. But it's where you go to policy. Like it has to be consistent. The
hmm
way that you run your school, there's a lot of different ways that can all be good, just like with
hmm
teachers. The idea is you can teach this content in the best way that you think. However, this is the content you must teach. You know what I mean? So like there's
right.
boundaries between individuality and also this is the way that it is. And so again, I do think that if everything I've ever thought about in all my time in Hancock County could be worked on at once, it would be insane because it's too many things. So we have
Right,
to prioritize 100%.
right.
Have to prioritize. I know this is a very emotional time for people. I know people get upset about things that they're seeing that they don't understand. And to be honest, some of that is just going to continue because very hard decisions absolutely must be made
Right.
and cannot be stopped. But, to your point earlier about what kind of things to preserve, It's the things that we see as most valuable. And, I'm not going to answer that at this moment or will never end, but, there
Right.
are things that, that you've seen that are just
I think you've
very
answered it.
important.
I think you've
Well,
answered it. Yeah. The culture
so,
deserves to be preserved. The successful educational scores deserve to be preserved. The well-being of the students and the teachers deserves to be
mhm.
preserved. I mean, that's a tall order for the
Yeah,
situation
and I
we're
want
in.
to say, and by no means, Pete, I know you didn't mean to slight it, but this has been called out multiple times. There's a tendency to talk about things and call it teacher, like the teacher strike, which
Hmm.
who else was on strike? The cooks, the bus drivers, the
Right. Yeah.
custodians,
Absolutely. It's personnel.
and
Yeah.
absolutely. And so I've been trying really hard to incorporate that language into what I'm saying because I
Hmm.
know that you meant it the same way I mean it,
Yeah.
when people
Absolutely.
talk about the teacher strike. But I'm trying to be more mindful of how I address that because all of the people that are working within these schools are being affected by all of these
Absolutely.
things. And I know that you didn't, intend to
Yeah.
not say that,
Absolutely.
but
No.
I've been
No.
called
No.
on it multiple times. And I think, you know what, that's right, because we really need to. This is a community. This is a vibrant community in a lot of ways. And I have to say, because of all the places I have been in this state, I come back saying people don't know what we have here.
Mm.
I was not a fan of Weirton until a few years ago, but by traveling around and seeing, just what struggles some other communities
Yeah.
are dealing with. Pete, you might not, I don't know if I've ever told you this. I have been in schools where students have not had a certified high school math teacher for 3 years in a row, or haven't had a certified science teacher for multiple years in a row.
Mm.
The teacher shortage in West Virginia is outrageous.
Hmm.
And we actually have highly qualified people in this district that are looking to lose their jobs,
Hmm. I
but,
know of a few.
and we
Yeah.
have some people that have filled in need, but by and by, we have way more experienced and qualified educators in this county than I have seen in many counties that I'm in. And it's a huge compliment to how Hancock County has always, I feel, supported education. I don't want to talk a ton about levies, but I know there's a lot of squeeze happening economically, and now people are very, very upset because they feel like their money has been wasted, which, time will tell exactly how that all worked out.
Hmm.
But because what the fact that our levies have always passed in previous years means to me is people do care about
Yes.
education. And there are always people that are negative saying, well, I don't have kids in school, why should I have to pay?
That's
And we have public education, and we want
that's
a thriving educated populace that is your neighbor. It
yeah.
doesn't have to be your own child. But I think the passage of levies has kind of shown people value that. And I do
Hmm.
want to just move real quickly just into voting,
Sure.
because
Oh
people have
yes,
asked
yes.
me,
That was the last thing I wanted to address.
yeah,
First of
people have
all,
asked me, well, Melissa, can I vote for you? And are you running against so and so? And I'm kind of like, well, yes and yes, but let
yes.
me explain. So I am in the Clay District. That doesn't matter to you. That matters to other candidates.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't know if you want to show the picture, if you're
I
able to
will.
do
Yep.
that. But the way that the Board of Education works is through magisterial districts. And that is a little bit of an oddball in many elections. This is not a city election, it's not a ward, whatever. So
Hmm.
if you see on the map here, Grant, as far as geographical location, is really big. Clay is smaller than Grant, and then Butler, if you can zoom back out a little bit so they can
Sure.
really see
Absolutely.
where Clay and Butler, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Butler small, but it's based on population. And these lines do move. And this
Hmm.
picture is from the framed picture at the Hancock County Courthouse because it's not online. But again, it doesn't matter for the voter, it matters for the candidate, because
Hmm.
everyone in Hancock County has the opportunity to vote for all three board seats. The issue is I'm in Clay, and someone from Clay has to be on the board, and no one from Clay currently is continuing on the board.
Right.
So if you vote for me, that doesn't mean that you are not supporting the grant person that you like, or you're not supporting the butler person that you like. You and I,
Right.
I tell everybody you can vote up to three.
Hmm.
You don't have to vote for three. You need to find the people you believe in that you think are going to make a difference
Hmm.
and vote accordingly. But you can only have one from grant because we already have one from grant staying. So
Hmm.
that's just no matter what. And you can only have one from Butler because we have one from Butler staying. And that's no matter what.
Hmm.
Somebody from Clay is going to get on, whether it's the incumbent, the other person running, or me, but both of us could. So I know you said
Right.
not to get into the weeds on that, but
No, but
I
the
do
point
want to
is that it
say,
doesn't matter whether you live in Butler or Butler, Clay, or Grant. Everyone can
right,
vote for you. That
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 is absolutely right. Yep.
right. That's the key takeaway here.
It is.
Is
And when you look at that, people will say, why that's so big? Well, again, it's based on population.
right.
So as people moved from one area into another, in Weirton, that kind of,
Hmm.
it congested Butler quite a
Hmm.
lot. But yes,
Yeah.
anyone in Hancock County can vote for me.
Yes, and we hope they do. It's May 12th. I wanted to give you a chance as we wrap up here. What is the key message? I mean, I this has been a very interesting conversation, and you wanted me to function as both interviewer and voter, and I think you got that. I think you heard my
Yeah.
concerns. Um, what though is the key message? I love your slogan. What is the key message that you want people to take away that you will work for, that you will work towards? Since that's ultimately what you're going to be doing, you're going to be asking questions and you're going to be developing that vision for Hancock County after the state leaves. What is what is the key message you want people to take away about you on the Board of Education and why you're seeking this seat?
Well, um, I'm really sorry because the ice cream truck is super distracting me right now. And I wasn't
Is that
anticipating that question because I want to talk about signs and wind and everything. But um, people that actually know me, I think can speak to this. But I'm trying to appeal to people that don't know me at all.
right,
And, people say, well, name recognition is really important. And what I keep telling people, even that tell me, I'm telling my family and friends to vote for you, I keep saying, you know what, I appreciate this, but also, and I send them my profile piece or, something else, because I
right,
don't want them voting for me just because they heard I was nice, just
right,
because they heard I was a teacher. I want them to know my qualifications. And it is a weird thing to sit and say, I think I'm qualified to be on the Board of Education.
no,
It
sure.
is really like surreal,
It's
but I
for
do
me
think I'm qualified.
it's relieving to know that you're qualified to be up there.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's just like, I don't know at what point you feel like a real grown up, because you just
Never,
think like,
never.
you go back. What My mother's in her 80s now, but I remember her being in her 70s and saying, I still feel like a kid sometimes. I'm like, what? But I have so much experience we didn't get to talk about today, but the other things that you did really point out, I ask questions. Like,
Hmm.
with me on the board, you are going to have
Hmm.
someone not only to ask my own questions, but to ask your questions. I
Hmm.
want to be available to people to give voice to what they're asking.
Hmm.
And I've done that in my professional career. People will probably think it's weird, but sometimes I have advocated for people's point of view that wasn't even mine because they weren't getting the answer that they needed. And so I asked. I'm not afraid
That's
of questions. I'm not afraid of seeking information.
right.
And really, at this point, I'm not even afraid of people misunderstanding me, because I think
Right.
there's enough people hearing my heart, my message, seeing my qualifications, that they'll say, I know this is a person that I can trust to
Hmm.
look out for the best for the students, first of all.
Hmm.
And I'm sorry, it's primary. I'm not putting the personnel on the chopping block in any way, because I am and was one of those people. But I feel like there's a hierarchy of how does this impact students first,
Hmm.
and then looking at staff and looking at the constituents, um, concerns. I mean, it all works together.
Hmm.
So obviously you can't choose to do something that is like so student focused that it cuts the legs off of everything else. But
Right.
I'm not status quo. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just it. And I've heard this term good old boys, and good and bad and confusing. Not everyone agrees with what that means. I'm going to put that out there
Yeah.
right now
Right.
because someone said that they heard that I was in the good old boys club. And what I think that means, I'm like, well, how? First of all, I do not qualify for more than one reason. But I don't know what they mean by that when they say that, which is why I say, ask, why do you say that? What do you mean? Because another person
Yeah.
told me, I think that means good values and going back to wholesome, this and that. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not what other people mean it to mean. But I can't say right now, I'm going to do this, this, and that as a very specific policy because what will guide my decision is the facts, not
Yeah.
emotion, not what everyone calls and tells me they want to see happen,
Right.
because you have to look at policy, you have to look at budgets, you have to look at impacts. And what you
Right.
were talking about with relationships and things like that, it's not all black and white. And we do know that some of these teachers that our county is going to lose, that it is actually going to be a loss.
Hmm.
It's a true loss because of what they bring with their character. And
100%.
it's one of those things where, what do I want to leave voters with? You're seeing me. I mean, this is
Yeah.
me. And sometimes I'm silly and sometimes I laugh at the wrong time, but I research things like you have said. I'm very serious about addressing true problems. I have empathy and I will listen. But at the end of the day, decisions have to be based on all the things we already talked about. They have
Right.
to make sense. They have to be in the best interest of all of the
Hmm.
stakeholders,
Hmm.
really. So
Yep. Absolutely.
at the end of the day, we're here to educate children, but also, to provide a community benefit. I
Yeah.
mean,
So, where can people find you if they'd like to reach out to you for, because the wealth of knowledge and experience you bring, it'd be impossible to cover in this one interview. Where can people reach out to you if they have other questions? Where can they find you?
okay. So one thing, and I wish I had it like right this minute to give you because we're finalizing my website and it is actually going to be the landing place for all the things. I'm on
Great.
Facebook. And I will just say I've had many friend requests from people I don't know. You
Mhm.
can join my campaign page, but I keep my private Facebook for people I've actually interacted with in my life. And I'm not hiding anything. I'm an open book. Ask me. I will talk with you for 4 hours. But,
Yeah. What's the name
um,
of your Facebook page?
um, okay, I should know this off the top of my
I
head,
think
but I
it's
want to
Melissa
make sure I'm
Bane
not
for
saying
Hancock
it
County.
wrong.
Yeah.
It is, um, so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Load. Okay. It is Melissa Bane for Hancock County Schools Board of Education 2026. But there are events coming up in the community on April 2nd, which this video is not probably getting out before
Right,
that,
right,
but
right,
it's
right.
at the Mary H. Weir Library. But there's another one next Thursday, which will be April 9th at Cove Presbyterian Church. And that is for just all kinds of candidates. It's actually a debate. But I intend to have events where people can just come and see me. We're going to be doing a door knocking campaign. My email is voteformelissabane@gmail.com. So email me, I will get back to you. I can connect you
Hmm.
with different events, but I'm happy to talk with people in person. I'm happy to go to places and talk with people. There's a concern about um, people seeing me and knowing me because I have made the decision to not do yard signs for the campaign.
Right,
And that is a very thoughtful decision. It started with I just can't make the environmental impact for that.
right,
They're a one plastic one use thing just to get my name out there. I don't want just my name out there. I want my story out there.
right.
So that is why we're doing a door to door canvassing. I'll have flyers, I'll have business cards with the QR code to my website. I
Right.
think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people to share things not only on their social media, but text it to your friends. Like once my
Right.
website is out, just text my website and they can find everything. Or if they want to invite me to come to a thing, if I can do it, I will. So the thing with the signs, some of my supporters like, I really love that, but I think for the environmental aspect, they're like, but I really think you should get some signs
Mm-hmm.
because, the seniors might not be on social media and they might not see anything about you. And I said, but my flyers have the information. Me coming
Mm-hmm.
to your door is going to have it. Supporters just talking with people about me, I think will cover that. And as I was having a conversation with someone that was trying to encourage me to still get a few, the wind was blowing like crazy. And I'm like, we've had some pretty bad windstorms here
Yeah.
the last couple of years. Multiple people have lost trees. One family down the road from where I grew up lost their entire farm from a
Mm-hmm.
tornado. I'm just not going that route. And I think it'll be okay. I'm hoping it'll be
Mm-hmm.
okay. But again, I'm not status quo. I don't buck tradition for the sake of bucking tradition, but make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have signs that I have to go and collect, that I have to make sure are not being blown away. I mean, flyers are more biodegradable by sure, for
Yeah.
sure than that. So again, my email, vote for Melissa Bane at gmail.com, I think is pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
My Facebook, I need to fix the web address so it is easier to find, but I would just say, I'm not sure if there's a better answer for that because I mean, I'll
No,
be
that's
getting it
fine.
out there. Yeah,
I think when we post this video, we'll put all that information in the in the text
perfect.
section of the video, and yeah, I would love perhaps maybe a week before the campaign. I'd love to do another interview with you before the election. Another interview with you because you'll have gotten out, you'll have done these roundtables, and you'll really be even more in touch with the voters. And you're very in touch
Yeah,
now. But I think it'd be great to do a follow up interview so we can talk about scheduling that. But
yeah,
and,
perfect.
and we're going to be doing a roundtable with folks coming up, so keep an eye out for that. And Melissa, you have my vote clearly, and I look forward to you being on the Board of Education. I look forward to following this next stage of your calling. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, that's vote for Melissa Bane, Bane, at gmail.com. You can also find her on Facebook. Just type in Melissa Bane for Hancock County Schools Board of Education 2026. And you should be able to find it just by putting in Melissa Bane. But we'll be sharing this on social media and it'll be on her website when that's live. And
Hmm.
thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this, Melissa. And folks, keep an eye out for the town halls she's going to be doing and the various events she'll be doing. That'll be a great opportunity to connect with her. And believe me, she will answer any question you ask her. And if she can't, she'll be honest with you about that. And she'll probably tell you why she can't answer that, which who does that? So,
Right.
which no, I think I love that. I love that about you. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Melissa. And I look forward to following up with you. But thank you for watching, and we will see you again next time.
Yeah.